Good evening. I'm Laura Didier, and I'm a board member of the Heart Theater, Inc. nonprofit, who is here tonight to tell you the story of a building that shaped downtown Effingham. But first, I'd like to preface my talk with the following statements. First of all, I do not claim to be a historian or an art historian. Rather, I have created my presentation based on articles and photos that I found in my research. I personally have not yet consulted firsthand or expert sources, although historic preservationists, architecture, and theater experts have been consulted for various steps in the process of our restoration journey thus far. I used my newspaper research to create a timeline and a background to tell our story, and really for my own curiosity as well, since I used to work at the Heart Theater way back in the 70s, and felt that there were like-minded community members who would like to know the story as well. My presentation is meant to start a community conversation about remembering the heart and to solicit the community stories, which perhaps may turn out to be expert sources, I don't know, in order to build on the incomplete base that I've compiled. And finally, I will not be taking any questions until the end of the presentation, purely due to time constraints. There's just way too much data to fit in to discuss specific details until after the presentation. We will share our contact information with all of you for all those questions that we can't get to tonight. Thank you for your understanding. And so I begin. Thank you for being here at the Courthouse Museum, a place dedicated to preserving the history of Effingham County and the stories that define who we are. Tonight, we're here to talk about a building that once stood at the center of everyday life downtown, a place where people gathered, not for court dates or civic business, but for joy, escape, and connection. When the Heart Theater opened in 1940, Effingham was a very different town, of course, and the world was on the brink of enormous change. Yet on Jefferson Street, lights glowed, a marquee came alive, and neighbors lined up together, dressed up, excited, and ready to share an experience. The Heart Theater wasn't just a place to watch movies. It was where first dates happened, where children spent Saturday afternoons, where families shared moments that stayed with them long after the credits rolled. Before we talk about saving the heart, we believe it's important to remember it, to understand why it mattered then and why it still matters now. So we jump in. So first of all, why a theater here in Effingham? By the late 1930s, downtown Effingham was the center of daily life. Now, I'm just going to point out that this photograph here is actually from the early 1900s, and even by then, it was known as the heart of the USA, which is kind of cool. This intersection, Jefferson and South Banker, sat right on US Route 40, the national road, where transcontinental traffic passed directly through town. Railroads had long made Effingham a crossroads, bringing travelers, commerce, and new ideas into the community. Photographs and newspaper descriptions from the mid-30s show a vibrant downtown lined with banks, grocery stores, shoe shops, tailors, barbers, a hotel, and entertainment venues, all within a few blocks. This was a place where people gathered, shopped, worked, and socialized. Now, Effingham already had a major movie theater by this time. I don't know if all of you know that or not. The Effingham Theater, which opened in 1927, just 2 blocks from where the Heart would later stand, seated about 1,000 people and quickly became a focal point of entertainment. By the mid-1930s, it was leased by the Fresina Amusement Company, a regional theater operator. By 1938, newspapers noted that the Effingham Theater was often short of capacity when popular films were shown. With only one screen, audiences had limited choice and sold-out crowds were common. This tells us something important. The Heart Theater was not built on speculation. It was built because Effingham already supported moviegoing as a shared community experience. A second modern theater downtown made sense, not just not just economically, but socially. In the 1930s, a movie theater wasn't just a place to watch a film. It was where the community gathered, escaped the stresses of daily life, and connected to the wider world. Theaters were symbols of optimism, progress, and shared experience, and Effingham was no exception. In 1937, local newspapers announced plans for a new theater in Effingham. The project was developed by Dominic Frisina of Frisina Amusement Company, who owned and operated many theaters in Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri. Now, this article states that he had 77 theaters. I can't deny that or prove that, but he had a lot of them. The theater, the Hart Theater, was designed by architect Carl T. Meyer of Springfield, Illinois, and built by contractor Roy M. Kennedy of Taylorville. Both Meyer and Kennedy had long-standing associations with Frisina and built several theaters for them. And the interior of the Hart Theater was decorated by C.A. Dawson of Mattoon. Now, I just want to make a note that over on this table over here, the white display board has more information and more details about building the Hart, including more about Dominic Frisina, the architect Meyer, and the decorator Dawson, if you want to check that out later. Construction took place during a time of national uncertainty, yet the decision to build a new theater reflected confidence in Effingham's future. The Hart Theater opened its doors on January 25th, 1940. Now, before we get to opening night, though, we're going to talk a little bit about the innovative design of the theater. The Hart was designed in a modern style for its era, incorporating the newer, streamlined elements of Art Deco called Art Moderne, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, that signaled sophistication and progress. So we're going to take a brief look at the architecture of the Hart, designed by Carl T. Meyer. Now, before I jump into that, I also want to tell you that over on the first table, the black display board has these same slides shown there if you want to take a look at that later as well. So the Art Moderne style of the Hart Theater. This image depicts the Hart Theater soon after its grand opening in 1940. In most of the history of the theater, its architectural style is referred to as Art Deco. But the facade of the Hart serves as a prime example of the transition between Art Deco and Art Moderne, also known as Streamline Moderne. The following elements of the facade are characteristic of Art Moderne and hallmarks of the machine age, including glass block windows, curved marquees, use of the neon, speed lines, a smooth exterior finish, and a neutral palette. So we're going to take a deeper dive into each of these items here. Cylindrical columns made of glass. Now these are actually vertical, and that's more of an Art Deco thing, but Meyer included that in his facade. The marquee, the curved corners, the speed lines, which are the horizontal lines to imply aerodynamic flow. Glass block tiles, of which we have some replacement tiles up here on the table. These are the tiles that flank the theater doors. There's those streamlined entrance doors with curved handles. And of course, the iconic lighted stairs that I know all of you remember. And upstairs in the restrooms, there's the smooth tile wall surfaces around a decorative mirror. It's in both the restrooms. And this mirror upstairs, I think it's a little bit more Art Deco-y, but. And then this light fixture in the upstairs hallway is in pristine condition. Very beautiful. And of course, the stylized doorknob, which also is kind of more Art Deco because of the verticality of it, but very cool. All right, I'm going to stop it right here. This is the original interior of the Hart, or at any rate, the only photo that exists, that we have access to. In the auditorium, there are more Art Moderne features, including ribbed and speed line detailing, and the speed line just means verticalness, if you will. Curved surfaces, indirect cove lighting, which you could see in the stairwells. There was coves in both of the stairwells. And then minimalist ornamentation as opposed to back in the 20s and 30s, they, like the Egyptian style, you know, real fancy ornamentation. And then this last one, the nautical cues, they claim that these pillars on either side of the stage look like smokestacks from a ocean liner. That was a thing, I guess, as part of art moderne. All right, I'm also going to stop this one here. So we've had a couple conversations about this. These are the ones on the right are the auditorium wall lights. We have them in storage over at the Hart, and we believe they are the original auditorium wall lights. And there's a photograph here of Mike Stevens standing underneath them back in 1970. And I believe in that same year, that's when they switched over to the house lights that you see there, because that's what's in the theater right now. But we do have the original lighting there. All right. And then these were murals that we discovered in the lobby behind a, on either side of the doors that were behind posters in a frame. And they have a nautical theme again. And the description that I've looked up, it says that decorating in a dreamlike nautical theme goes along with art moderne's emphasis on a common source of inspiration for the streamlined style, which was those modern ocean liners of the era. I guess that's a thing. All right. Now, the modern Hart featured amenities that were impressive for a small town theater at the time. There was updated projection, there was comfortable seating, and there were architectural details meant to elevate the experience beyond everyday life. This was not just a place to see a movie. Well, sorry, I was going to say there was these quotes in the paper, an ultra-modern show house in news reports, and a temple of entertainment, as described. So this was not just a place to see a movie, it was a destination, especially on a hot day. Because quite honestly, it was one of the only public places that had air conditioning. So, and that's an actual ad for the Hart. Now, we get to opening night, January 25th, 1940. Opening night at the Hart Theater was an event. People dressed up to be seen at a place of such elegance. The marquee lit up the street. Friends and neighbors gathered not just to watch a film, but to be part of something new. The main feature for the grand opening was His Girl Friday, a pre-release film with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell with extra selected short subjects. Now, before entering the building on that opening night, there was a special tribute from the Flaming Hearts of Effingham High School. Can you believe it? Now, that is not a picture of the Effingham Flaming Hearts. I just want you to know it's from the era, but it's not actually them. Before entering the building on that opening night, the band director, Andrew Makita, led the local high school band in a brief concert in front of the new theater as part of a dedication ceremony. With police keeping the street free of traffic, people gathered for the presentation. The band marched in front of the theater, then played beneath the brightly lit marquee with additional light provided by 2 floodlights that had been erected across the street. While still on the sidewalk, theater goers purchased their tickets, 10 cents for children and 30 cents for adults. So opening night at a small town movie house in Illinois in 1940 was a big deal. For many, attending the Hart marked a special occasion, one remembered long after the movie itself faded from memory. Now I'm going to read a couple excerpts from articles from opening night, including this one. Mr. and Mrs. The Stevenses, the Finoglios, they attended the grand opening of the Hart Theater And following the initial showing, there was a banquet at which all the executives of the company, the circuit managers, and a few guests were present. Among those attending included the Clarks, the Arvidsons, the Milnes, the Brumlevis, the Martins, and even H.K. Carter. A large number of local people, headed by Mr. and Mrs. Dominic Frasina, will attend the opening. So that means that the head of the Frasina Amusement Company attended the Hart opening. Let's see, but here's my favorite. Betty and Shirley Smith. They pronounced the show excellent entertainment in the theater a vision of modern artistic beauty. They admired the large array of cut flowers which were in the lobby. The flowers were sent by other theaters and some Hollywood movie stars. Do we all believe that? No. To those who see beneath the surface, there is a significance attached to the opening of the new Hart Theater. There is visual evidence of a great faith in the future of Effingham. Here is proof that Effingham is going constantly forward. And then, of course, the Temple of Entertainment quote. Have to add that one in every time. So that was all from the opening night. Now, over the years, the Hart Theater became woven into everyday life here in Effingham. It hosted first dates, Saturday matinees for children, family outings, and shared rituals that spanned generations. For many residents, the Hart was where lifelong memories began. And the Hart even was a place for them to vote their local union or for an ecumenical service, which I did not know until I saw it in the newspapers. So I'm going to cycle through some photographs here that I found in the newspapers, and we're going to start out with 1947, where crowds were turned away from the Mom and Dad movie. Now, I don't have enough time tonight to describe to you what the Mom and Dad movie was about, but feel free to look that up, 1947 Mom and Dad movie, and you will see why there were crowds there. 1949, crowds gather for the premiere of Father Was a Fullback. And I believe that picture is facing east, and they're all out in the street, or in the intersection, I should say. The next photo is from 1967. This is the first ecumenical service that was held at the Hart Theater. All right, and then you're gonna like this one, 1947. All these kids are mobbing Santa Claus while he's on his way to the Hart. It's not even at the Hart. It's down here at the corner of, on the courthouse lawn. He doesn't even get to the Hart yet, and the kids are mobbing him. And then the next photograph is from 1960. Maybe. And super cute picture of all these kids. They are waiting for their free cartoons. All right, 1954. And on the stage at the Hart, they are crowning the Centennial Queen. It's not a very good picture, but she's there nonetheless, up on the stage. The next photo is from 1958. It is a packed house for the Saturday matinee. Now, a packed house during 1958 was very different than, recent years, because at that time there was 750 seats in that little theater. I think eventually when it closed, I think it had 500 seats maybe. So that's a lot of people in that house. All right, and I think this next one is my favorite photograph, I think. It's from 1962, and it is a photograph of all these bikes. Around the corner from the Hart, all these kids had driven their bikes to the theater to see their, free movies or whatever, and they're all lined up along the street. I thought it was a pretty cool picture. And then the last photo I have is from 2004, and it's from a student video festival for Effingham and Teatown. And actually in the 2000s, there was lots of student film festivals, actually, which was pretty cool. All right, so the heart in everyday life. But like all long-lived buildings, the heart changed with the times. There was new films, there was new technologies, there was shifting audience expectations that shaped its operation. Now, I'm gonna just stop here and say the reason I have this photograph here is that's of the concession stand, obviously. Back when there was the grand opening, there was no concession stands in the theater. They didn't have concessions in the theater at that time. You had to go out during intermission to like the local little snack place and get your snacks. These changes reflect broader cultural trends and show how the theater worked to remain relevant as entertainment evolved. But two things did not change. The first was the appeal of the Hart Marquee, which has remained an icon and a thing of beauty, filling Effingham Square with a bright neon glow since the very first day it opened. And the second thing is the ghost light. I don't know if anybody knows what a ghost light is, but it's a long-standing tradition believed to ward off spirits in a dark theater. So at the end of the night, the employees would put the ghost light up on the stage, turn it on, leave for the night, and it was supposed to ward off all the ghosts in the theater. And we have the ghost light right here. Eventually, broader changes in entertainment, like the rise of TV, the rise of drive-in theaters, home video, and multiplexes, as well as economics and lifestyle, affected single-screen theaters everywhere. What happened to the Hart was not unique at all. Across Illinois and the nation, historic theaters faced similar challenges and declining audiences. Many were lost, such as the Liberty Theater in Taylorville, which I just happen to have a photograph of. Some survived by incorporating new technologies such as digital projections, hosting events, or focusing on independent and art house films to cater to a diverse range of audiences. Many historic theaters have undergone restorations to preserve their original charm while incorporating modern amenities. So the Hart adapted and adapted and adapted and stayed in operation until 2008, thanks to the guidance and hard work of its many, many owner-operators, managers, and other staff over the years. So we are going to take a look at the Hart's timeline of ownership, but I also want to point out that these same slides that I'm going to show you are also on that long poster board back at the very back table there that you can take a look at afterwards. So we're going to take a look at all of the owners from 1940 to today. The importance of the owner-operators of the Hart Theater throughout its history isn't just about the role of leadership and support. It's always been about people. People who believe small towns deserve big experiences. People who understand that preserving history doesn't mean living in the past. And people who know that when we gather in a shared space, something amazing happens. These are the folks who are part of the Hart story, who kept the marquee lights on for us. So we're going to begin with the Fresina Amusement Company. It was run by Dominic Fresina and his family, who built the Hart Theater as part of a rapidly expanding Midwestern theater circuit. Now, I just want to point out that all these little towns that are here, central and southern Illinois, they all had a Fresina theater in them at one time. Opening in January of 1940, the Hart embodied the art moderne style and Fresina's commitment to first-run films, technical upgrades, and aggressive promotion. Under Fresina ownership, the Hart saw continuous reinvestment, sound upgrades, cinemascope installations, seating replacements, marquee redesigns, and community partnerships, making it a cultural anchor in Effingham for 4 decades. Mr. Russell Hogue served as the Hart's founding manager, and oversaw its grand opening. So he was the manager from 1940 to 1945. Now, he was already managing the Effingham Theater when he became the manager of the Hart. And I just want to point out that almost all of the managers that we're going to see here also did the same. They managed both the Effingham Theater until it closed and the Hart Theater at the same time. Hogue became a familiar civic figure, active in Kiwanis fundraisers, March of Dimes campaigns, and school events. Here he's created a contest for high school students called What America Means to Me. His tenure emphasized showmanship, community engagement, and war-era morale. In 1945, he was reassigned within the Fresina circuit as the company expanded. Next up was Mr. Kenneth Rout from Newton, who took over during the immediate post-war period, focusing on repairs, redecoration, and restoring audience momentum. He initiated a full 7-day schedule of movies at both the Hart and the Effingham Theater, with continuous shows on Sundays. I'm going to stop there to tell you that before him, I believe that they showed movies for like 1 day or 3 days or something like that, but he instituted a full 7-day schedule. And on our artifact table over here to my right are some actual flyers for the Effingham Theater and the Hart Theater. They're back to back from the 1940s of what was coming soon or what was playing that week. So if you want to take a look at those. Newspaper coverage highlights upgrades to both the Hart and Effingham Theater, Rotary involvement, and promotions designed to re-energize moviegoing after wartime restrictions. So here he is going to show the Rose Bowl game at the Hart Theater. Joseph Pedrucci. His short but notable tenure included maintaining Fresina's promotional style while transitioning leadership. Now, I don't have a picture of him, but I do have this article where he got married during the less than 1 year that he was the manager at the Hart Theater. So his departure coincided with reassignment within the circuit and paved the way for one of the Hart's longest serving managers. And that would be Mr. John Sturm from 1949 to 1958. John Sturm's era marked a golden age of post-war exhibition. He oversaw major milestones, including CinemaScope installation, national pre-release engagements, and bold promotional stunts. Sturm was outspoken on film censorship, standards, and community values, making him a visible public advocate for the theater. His sudden death in 1958 ended a transformative chapter in the Hart's history. I believe he died of in a car accident. And Phil Hayes is who was next, 1958 to 1965. Now, he brought energy, creativity, and technical savvy to the Hart. He was known for imaginative promotions like this one, and I have to read this out loud because I just love it so much. We'll pay $63 for one black mother cat with 9 black kittens, or one black mother cat with 13 kittens, half black and half white. Must have by Friday the 13th. Contact Phil Hayes from the Hart Theater. And then 3 days later, there was an ad that said, no more cats. So he did live displays, themed decor, charity tie-ins, and playful advertising. Although this picture from the newspaper was not advertising. The story behind it is that I think it was his plane, I'm not sure, but he flew to California to pick up the reels for the movies that were supposed to play like the next day or that weekend or whatever, because they were not going to get there in time. So he got in a plane and flew out there and picked them up. So Hayes also guided the Hart through technological change, including early cable television initiatives tied to Fresina interests. So I believe, just from what I've read, that Phil Hayes was the godfather of cable television in Effingham. In 1960, in competition with theaters all over the world, the Hart Theater, under Hayes' management, was one of 42 theaters recognized for its high standards. His departure marked the end of the classic single-screen, studio-era management style. And next up is, probably all know him, Mr. Mike Stevens, who was manager from 1966 to 1980. Now, one thing I want to point out though is that even though he was manager from 1966, he actually worked for Fresina since I believe it was 1949. So he was in the circuit for a very long time. I know he was in Olney and he was somewhere else too. And then he became manager of the Hart. Often called Mr. Theater, Mike Stevens defined the Hart for more than 35 years, so almost as long as Fresina owned them. As manager, he led extensive renovations, new screens, new seating, there's that picture again, sound systems, and marquee upgrades while maintaining strong civic ties. Then in 1980, Stevens purchased the Hart and the Rustic Drive-In, operating them as family businesses under PCK Theaters. Now, I don't think she's here, but does anybody know what PCK stands for? It was Paul, Cindy, and Kim. Those were Mike's children. His stewardship bridged downtown moviegoing into the multiplex era, preserving the Hart long after similar theaters closed. So here we have, under Mike Stevens, a major marquee renovation that took place in 1970. And that photograph of them removing the marquee, that will not be the last time you see that. Not the picture. Here's a photo of Mike receiving an appreciation. I'm sorry. This is a photo of Mike and his wife, Mary Jo, who were co-owners of the Hart. And then a photo of Mike receiving an appreciation certificate from the Effingham Chamber for the renovations that were done on the theater. And then this last article is when Fresina promoted Stevens to GM, and he went, his district or whatever, he went around the circuit or whatever, and then he resigned in November of 1978, and he went back to being manager for Fresina at the Hart. And in 1979, him and his wife purchased the Village Cinemas from the Mayhoods, and in 1980, they purchased the Hart Theater and the Rustic Drive-In from Fresina, and that is when the Hart went under local ownership. So all those years before were all owned by Fresina. Now, during his time, also, Bob Stevens worked for Fresina in various capacities before working for PCK Theaters until his retirement. And Don Elmore ran operations while Mike Stevens was serving as GM for Fresina in 1977. And that was before Don became the city's building official, if anybody knew him then. Okay. Then, Mark McSparren with Sensible Cinemas purchased the Hart from Mike Stevens in 2002, then completed a significant renovation, including reduced seating and accessibility improvements. Despite efforts to reposition the Hart for modern audiences, financial and market pressures led to having to lease the theater and then eventual closure. Now, McSparren briefly reopened the theater in 2007 before placing it up for auction, and then he sold the theater in 2009. So under him, Jan Miller managed the day-to-day operations just between 2002 and 2003 during a transitional period. And then leasing the Hart from McSparren, Skip Houston and Charles Zweck positioned the theater as an art, film, and specialty venue. Their programming emphasized independent cinema, art films, festivals, there's that picture again, and alternative content, an early experiment in niche downtown exhibition. So they were lessee, that's how you pronounce it, operators between 2003 and January 2004. But after buying out his partner, Houston, Zweck continued the art film focus while expanding community partnerships and special events. Now, under his operation, Rod and Judy Witop emerged as co-managers, but ultimately, financial realities made Zweck choose not to renew his lease from McSparren, and the theater closed in late 2006, although, as we said before, briefly reopening in early 2007 under McSparren. So, the Witops became the public face of the Hart during its final years as a working cinema. My favorite photo of all time. That was for a Greece film festival. They hosted festivals, classic film nights, and themed events. Their work reinforced the Hart's role as a community gathering place rather than just a movie house. And that is a photo of Rod in the ticket booth. And anybody that out there that worked at the theater and worked in that ticket booth, we all had the same experiences. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. All right, and Tad Sliger acquired the Hart from McSparran in 2009 with preservation in mind. During his long ownership, so he was owner from 2009 till 2022, a community group started a Friends of the Hart Theater social media page, hoping to raise awareness and to see how much interest the community had in reviving the theater. Though the theater remained largely dark, with occasional marquee light-ups for community events, Sliger stabilized the building and completed targeted repairs and laid groundwork for future use of the venue. This photograph here is pretty much what the theater looks like today. It's completely gutted, and it's just waiting for the day that it gets restored. His long-term stewardship kept the Hart intact during a vulnerable period. Purchasing the property from Sliger in 2022, Amy Van Bergen reignited public momentum for the Hart, launching community meetings, grant efforts, surveys, and historical research. She explored local and regional nonprofits for the best mission fit with the Hart. She worked with external experts in historic theaters, market feasibility, and architecture, who assessed the local market for long-term success and provided focus for key programming and entertainment opportunities. She also determined through surveys that the Hart would be most successful long-term in what the community most wanted, according to the surveys, as a multi-purpose venue for movies, live music concerts, live theater or dance, comedy nights, open mic nights, and rentals, whether it be corporate, weddings, special events. Under Amy's leadership, the Hart earned listing on the National Register of Historic Places in 2023 and hosted its first film screening in 17 years in 2024. Her work reframed the Hart as a preservation-driven cultural project. So that's a photograph of the first outdoor movie night. It was held on the courthouse lawn. Now, formed through Amy Van Bergen's donation of the building, Hart Theater, Inc. represents the theater's transition to a community-owned future. So in 2025 is when we incorporated. And guided by a volunteer board, the nonprofit focuses on restoration, fundraising, and reestablishing the Hart as a multi-use cultural venue, ensuring the Hart's future for generations. The board consists of individuals with diverse backgrounds, including law, engineering, marketing, and education, all passionate about reviving the theater. I can attest to that. With the nonprofit in place, the theater is poised for an era of community engagement and artistic expression. The board is currently working on strategic planning and fundraising efforts to bring the Hart Theater back to life. Speaking as a board member, our hearts are truly, truly grateful for all these owners and employees that came before us, and we will work very hard to honor their memory and their efforts. Even today, the Hart Theater remains significant. Architecturally, it reflects a distinct era. By the way, that we received that art and architecture plaque from the Historic National Road Association. Culturally, it represents shared community experiences. Civically, it stands as a reminder that downtown Effingham once had and can again have a vibrant gathering place. Other small-town theaters have been preserved and shine as restorations of economic and community value, such as the Wilby Theater in Edwardsville as just one example. And that's a photograph of the before and after their restoration. Before any restoration work begins, preservation starts with understanding. We are researching records, we're inventorying artifacts, we're collecting photographs, please, we need more photographs, and listening to personal stories. This museum setting is the perfect place for presenting this work because preservation begins with memory and then sharing what we learn, like we're doing right now. So our nonprofit organization, the Heart Theater, Inc., was formed to guide this effort, supported by volunteers, historians, architectural advisors, and community members and partners who believe that the heart is worth saving. The work so far has focused on documentation, education, and community connection beyond stabilization of the current building. So looking ahead, we are not here tonight to talk about construction plans or fundraising goals. We're here tonight to say that the Heart Theater still matters and that its future should be built on a clear understanding of its past. We want to paint the vision by imagining the future. We'd like to be able to say, once restored, this building could be, or imagine a night where, or this space can again be a place for, you fill in the blanks. Historic preservation doesn't begin with bricks or blueprints. It begins with understanding, with remembering why a place mattered in the first place. Now, the Heart Theater, as we dissolve this picture, the Heart Theater tells a story that fits naturally within these museum walls because it reflects how Effingham gathered, celebrated, adapted, and changed over time. It reminds us that history isn't only found in official records, but in shared experiences. So you need to remember that your seat at the heart is waiting. So help us bring it back to life. So in closing, our goal before any restoration begins is to honor that story, to listen, to collect memories, to make sure that when the heart's next chapter is written, it's rooted firmly in the past that made it worth saving. We thank you very much for being part of that process tonight and for helping keep the heart of Effingham alive. Please remember that this theater belongs to all of us in this town. So now we've reached the question and answer session. So before we begin that session, we ask that before you leave tonight, that you remember to sign our guest book if you haven't done that already, or register or whatever, and fill out a comment card with any stories you have about the heart or any questions that we don't get to tonight. Please fill them out and leave them with us so that we can get back to you with the answers to them. After I finish this slide, I'm going to put up a slide of the list of all of the board of directors, and they're not all here tonight, but you are welcome to ask questions of any one of us, okay? And I'll have you guys stand up. So who would like to begin the questions? Anybody? Was it information overload? So, okay, that's not a question. So it might have appeared that we had a lot of photographs, but we really don't. We have photographs from newspaper articles, and that pretty much is it. We have one interior photograph, and we have one that we think is the original facade. We can't verify that, but we think it is the original facade. And that's pretty much it. And we have all of our artifacts, and we have photographs, of course, of the stuff that's over at the theater right now. But anything that you guys can contribute, if you used to work there or you're just interested in, seeing what's going to happen with it, whatever, feel free to ask us these questions. Back in 1986, I was doing my master's degree in architecture. I contacted Mike Stevens about the art, and he invited me in, went up to the second floor to his office. On the wall
congratulating the theater for opening and credited all of the contractors involved with building because they haven't.
We don't have access to that, yeah. Not sure where that ended up. But you know, there's a lot of owners between here and there, so could be anywhere. Yes. We have talked to her, and well, actually, all three of them we've talked to. Two of them live in Texas, so they don't come up here very often. And Kim, I think, was planning to come tonight.
And we had to sit in the very front row. He was on one seat and I was on the next, and then there was that aisle, and then there was the small seating section next to it. When the girl first got bit by the shark,
Up close and personal.
and then I screamed again because something grabbed my leg. And I looked down and none out and screamed, fell out of her seats. So sorry. I think I know who it was. But I was petrified. I thought that shark was coming.
Everything out there, blank slate. Plans are still very much up in the air. There's a lot of options. We're just going to work through those. Next steps.
And so we saw one that was very much like ours as far as age and style and size. And then we saw some that are much more elaborate, but also very large and totally different purpose too, because all the theaters that we saw each day had a different purpose. And so we're looking at, you know, the size, the scale, the usefulness of it, how that any of that would fit here. So, you know, we went to this one theater, it was very large, meeting rooms, different session rooms, different everything, and they also had a stage large enough for an orchestra. And then they had balconies and side balconies, and it was much more elaborate than we ever needed to be. So it made sense for them, but we're trying to figure out what makes sense for this, and that will be long lasting.
There's definitely interest, for sure, but we have to manage how to make it into a multi-use theater. Because remember, the floor goes like this. And so if we want to use it for, you know, to rent out for weddings or something like that, you can't do that on a slanted floor. So we have to figure that out. And we have to figure out how many seats we can likely fit in there. And what are the other things that have to be restored. So.
Ask my mom if she